Before I begin, I'd like to congratulate the winners of the Kit the Traveler Story Contest. This story was written by the first place winner, Solana Firestone. Frost. She was the same pine-green color as the forest, and her hair was made of leaves the color of snow. To anyone who hadn't yet met a member of her race, the Silvari would have looked quite disturbing. Although she had a humanoid build and face, humans did not have spines protruding from the bridges of their noses and cheekbones, nor did they have layered pointed leaves for ears. She readied her bow and glanced behind her, where her pet drakehound rested in the snow. He whimpered softly, casting warm brown eyes in her direction. "Soon, Jags," she whispered, ice-white eyes crinkling with her smile. "We must be patient." She reached a hand down and scratched the large noble beast, slipping him a piece of jerky to reward him for another day of excellent behavior in the wilderness. The Silvari then shifted in place, repositioning herself and peering down the cliff once more. She had hunted many beasts and brigands before, never failing to take in a kill and never losing a captured foe. Any good hunt must be preceded by waiting for the beast to show its face. It was when the animal thought itself safest that she had drawn her bow and proven that silence is not necessarily an indicator of safety. The hound gave a low, throaty growl, breaking her from a reverie. She scanned the snowy valley and spotted her prey. She knocked an arrow onto her string, aiming at the oblivious traveler. "Sick 'em!" The dog rushed down with a baying snarl upon him. The man had barely enough time to draw a staff before its vice-like jaws clamped down on it. Any later, he had no doubt the now splintered wood would have been his chest or shoulder. "Alive, Jags!" came a crisp female voice. His throat plummeted as he realized that his attacker was a hunter, and he was her prey. Survival was the least of his concerns. He must now fight for his freedom, and despite her command, he had no doubt that his life might require battle. Tossing aside the broken wood, he drew his sword and slashed at the dog. It yelped, jumping back before redoubling its efforts and lunging at him again. The ranger had disappeared into the shadows when her dog had rushed him. His nerves were on end as his eyes scoured the snow for any sign of her. A slight shimmer in the air alerted him to her presence. This time, he took the offensive and charged at her, breaking through her camouflage and swinging at her bow, which was formed from seething violet thorns. It held, and she kicked him back, whistling for the dog again and switching to her sword. "I suppose we're even now," he gasped, leaping back as its fiery edge bit into the snow and let the hissing trail of steam. "Oh, hardly," she replied coolly. "You nicked my dog's nose." He let out a cry of pain as a flaming blade burned hungrily into his leg. Acting reflexively, he snatched the torch from her other hand and disappeared into the wooded shadows. He tossed it to the ground, lighting the cold, dry grass below on fire. Despite the frost in the air and the snow around, the weeds caught quickly, and the ranger threw her hands in front of her face protectively. Though he had thought this would have dissuaded or startled the ranger and her pet, the man was surprised to see that she had quickly scooped up the dog and made sure that he was safe before removing herself. Was that admiration he felt rising in him? A small smile spread across his face. "Quit stalling," she called, catching sight of him again. "The sooner you come out with your hands up and weapons down, the quicker we can get this over with and head someplace warm." "If by warm you mean a cell, then I think I'll pass on your offer," he replied, drawing his short bow and taking aim. "Freedom sounds much better than captivity. And life sounds better than death, doesn't it? I thought you Nightblooms were supposed to be the secret, solitary sort. You seem fairly lenient with your methods today." "It's not every day I get the chance to hunt another Silvari," she replied, returning his smile with one of her own. "And if you think that your arrow will hit me before mine strikes you—" He threw back his head and laughed, exposing a black-barked face. "Ill of Frost," he chuckled, dull orange eyes glittering at her. "Surely you don't think that you could take down the greatest thief this side of the Shiver Peaks with a single shot?" "You may have a reputation, my dear Veritas," she replied, her grip still steady, "but I sincerely doubt that you are the best on this side of the Shiver Peaks, or that you'd be completely unaffected by an arrow in your side." She stepped closer, and Jags growled. "You injured my dog, dodged arrest, and now you're insulting me with your failure to accept responsibility. You cannot run from the law forever." "Ah, but you're not exactly the law, are you?" He waved a piece of paper in front of her. Her hand flew to a pocket. "How did you—" "Ill of Frost, bounty hunter for hire. Contract: capture infamous thief Veritas Noct and bring him in for questioning before the Arcane Council relating to crimes of mischief, mayhem, and disappearance of several important pieces of jewelry." "Really? Is this what you've descended to?" The pale mother would be displeased. And I suppose your thieving ways are something for which you would be proud? He held up his hands in mock surrender. It's not as if those grumpy gnomes were using them, and if you'd seen the size of those crystals, you'd understand. Those grumpy gnomes may not have been using them at the time, but they're rather upset at the loss of those necklaces and earpieces. If you don't return with me to Radissum, I can assure you that they'll use more deadly means to get you there, and they'll probably not weep if your face were to be pulped. Oh, but I've got such a nice face, he pouted, and an equally nice reward. He looked over the note again and let out a low whistle. Well, I suppose I can't argue with that. He flicked his gaze up from the paper to her. Sunset met frost, and he could have sworn that he saw her icy gaze melt just slightly. Realization slowly dawned on him. How long have you been chasing me? He asked quietly, pocketing the letter. I knew I saw someone giving pursuit back in Radissum. Was that you? Perhaps. She was gradually allowing the arrow to drop. Why didn't you catch me then? If I was your most recent contract, and word must have traveled quickly in the city, then why not catch me then and there? Get the whole thing over in one blow. He stepped cautiously closer, casting a wary eye at the drakehound. She let loose a low, rich laugh, relaxing her grip on the bow. Oh, Verdus, she sighed softly, shaking her head. How did we get here? Your wild hunt was to run, and yours was to chase, he smiled. I suppose that old saying about opposites and attraction is true, isn't it? He paused, taking another step forward. I cannot stop just yet. Neither can I, she replied. Her face had a look of bittersweet contemplation. Verdus paused before reaching into his pack and pulling out some paper-wrapped parcels, extending them to Illa. Here, he said quietly. She took them cautiously, a slow look of optimism spreading across her face. You don't need an excuse to chase me anymore, he murmured. There's a letter explaining my mischief, expressing my remorse, and apologizing for the missing pieces. Missing? He opened his onyx-skinned hand, revealing a square diamond pendant. It's lovely, she whispered. Her gaze flicked back to him. Why did you steal this one? He folded his arms over his chest, leaning slightly to the side and smiling. I could be a total heel and tell you that it's because it's the biggest and shiniest thing there, but the truth might make you blush. Try me. Though claiming that she would be the one embarrassed, it was he who rubbed his neck self-consciously. It reminded me of your eyes, he hummed. A little piece of home and heart which I'd left behind long ago. I want you to keep it. Why? If it reminds you so much of that which you left. No. He curled her fingers around the necklace, pushing it gently back towards her. The reason I don't need it anymore is that I intend to make our hunts so much more intriguing than they already are. If that proves to be so, I'll see you very often, but only if you promise me one thing. And what would that be? A smile tugged at the corner of her lips, and her breath caught as he leaned toward her. His sunset orange eyes glowed. Make it an interesting chase, Illifrost. Give me a reason to run, and I'll give you one to catch me. I suspect that before all is said and done, we'll have a bit of a jolly run through the whole of Tyria. He then disappeared in a cloud of black smoke, appearing a short distance behind her. I'll see you shortly, his voice echoed on the icy wind. If you can catch me. She was the color of frosted pine needles, deep teal green with white eyes and leafy hair. She had never missed a contract or target, except for him. She returned the jeweler to the Asura, but apologized that there was a missing piece which she could not find. They took it out of her pay, but she didn't seem to mind. If I didn't know any better, I'd say she was almost cheerful, growled the councilman, glowering suspiciously at the woman's receding form. The others had their ideas as to why this might be, but the only one who knew was Illa herself. As she sauntered off, the flowing script from the letter in her hand repeated in her mind. Enjoy the necklace. I'll see you in Kryta. Adventurers, despite their insistence that they are fine with the missing pendant, the councilmen of Radissum have more than heavily implied that they wish to be further compensated for the jewelry. If Illifrost is to have a chance of catching at the Verdus, she needs to bring 3 Beryl Orbs to Kit for delivery. Once again, congratulations to Solana Firestone for winning the first place with her story, Frost. Additional information about this weekend's quest, including times and turn-in, is included in the video description below.